Hi guys, I got tired of that song pretty quickly, as you may have seen. So, give me a second here. I am trying to figure out the new setup, but there we go. Getting the camera on and then streaming everything. It is so weird now. Why can't I share my screen? I have to share my screen first, and then I can stream my camera. This is pretty special. But how we doing, guys? Hopefully everyone is doing well. Uh it's been an easier day than yesterday, but you guys may have seen from my Twitter that it still wasn't the best. I'm seeing my camera is pretty much black right now. Here, let's do this. Awesome. So it's been an easier day, but still a little bit rough on my side. I should have let my profits run, but I failed to do so, sadly. So it still ended up in just a slight winning day, and I'm still down on the week, even though if we look at the price action, we have such a beautiful swing formation here. Right, this is something I was talking about a little bit in the Discord today when someone asked me, when do I expect trending days? Well, for me, it's all based on the higher time frame chart. For example, based on this weekly outlook, we found that previous week's high was a clear target for us. I mean, I can bring it back in the candle ranges here just so it looks a bit better. But previous week high was a clear draw if we confirm this swing. Why is that? Well, looking at the premium discount, this is our first discount in efficiency, which for now we have stayed above the midpoint, which we call the mean threshold in this case. So we have respected this order block. What do I expect after that, right? After we show respect of this very clear level? Well, I expect a swing to form, right? A 3-bar swing. So with this candle, if I expect this candle to be the actual swing point, I want the next candle over to have a low that is higher than this one. This is the first step, which confirms for me that this is a swing, right? When we see this candle close, this is now, on a daily chart, a swing low. And from the fourth candle, what do I expect? I expect anticipation higher. So since I was bullish and understanding what this candle needs to do to confirm this swing within this key level, well, I expected a trending day because we have a lot of movement to do with a clear target. Same thing going into the next day for the fourth candle of the swing. I expect the same thing to happen. We have a clear target. I want to see continuous expansion. Now going into Wednesday, it's going to be a little different because now we can retrace. So I'm still going to be looking for price to go higher to previous week's high, but I'm still going to be open to retracements now that these 2 days are over. But for these two candles specifically, with a clear target and a clear movement from this internal liquidity point, I expect trending days. And so from that point is how I go down the time frames and build my trading idea, of course. But because of those, I expect trending day structure. What does that mean, right? Let's forget about what happened up to now today, and let's look purely at the price action. For a trending day, I expect an initial downside movement. Sometimes we can do that during the Asian session, but more often than that, on trending days, we'll see the low form in London, and then expansion. Then New York can do one or two things. We can see retrace continuation, or just right away, we just run higher. Of course, the first initial target was previous day high. We did have some SMT here. We can see when NASDAQ took it out. When we have counter trend SMT on trending days, I really don't care about it. That's the truth. For me, SMT is not a reason to build an idea. It's a confirmation of an idea. And since I had no short ideas, I was only looking for longs. Well, bearish SMT doesn't do anything for me, except for example, if I'm in a trade to go long and my target gets hit on ES but not on NASDAQ, this is still a sign to take profit on NASDAQ since now this target has been reached. But a very straight up framework looking for price to go higher. And then of course we had some opportunities in the PM session with actually a very nice example of the noon to 1 range. So we will be going over it. We'll be going back over also when we use the noon to 1 range instead of the noon to 130. I think it's been a while since we talked about that actually, so could be a great idea to go over that. Going down to the 1 minute now though, and let's remove London so we don't see that, and let's also remove the previous day high, previous day low, so we can purely focus on our chart. I'll do the same thing on the other side. I also like to just double click on the levels. By the way, if you guys didn't know, that opens up your settings for any indicator you have on your charts. So pretty useful thing to know. Now we did have 10 a.m. news, but what are our criteria to trade before news? I believe we talked about it very recently, actually. But our criteria to trade before news, we are looking at a clear Judah swing with SMT. Now, if I was looking for shorts, this move higher along with the SMT that we saw at previous day high at this point, with ES not reaching previous day high, would have been plenty. But as I was not looking for shorts, I was looking for longs. This Judah swing along with the SMT that we'll see here in a second, was it this swing point I was looking at? Yeah, I always like to refer to just the last one it took out because I don't look to trade this until it trades higher, forms a breaker block. And the same swing point is right here. So we did have SMT at the lows. We had a Judah swing lower. So I personally looked to trade beforehand. Now you'll notice here, even if we put the indicator, let's just adjust the filtering settings. We'll look at the indicator here, but you'll find that it doesn't find this breaker block, right? This is something I'm actually looking to change. You'll probably see an update push tomorrow. It's something I was planning on working on tonight. But this is a valid breaker block in my case. Even though this candle that formed the initial swing low has a higher high than this point, right, which is the reason why it's not finding this breaker block, it is still a valid breaker because we look at the sequence. We look at the low to high to lower low to breaking the high. This is how we form a breaker block. So this was a valid breaker. This was a valid unicorn for me. And this is exactly when I took my first trade, which was this beautiful long right here. If we look at the 3 PDR stop loss, it's pretty clear. We did have an IFVG here, but that was too far for my liking for me to look for an entry, right? This is getting quite far from the breaker block at this point, while the fair value gap, of course, is overlapping. But since it is still valid at the point of my entry, I can count it as a 3 PDR, as one of my 3 PD arrays. So I have IFVG, fair value gap, and fair value gap. But even if you did not count this, your stop would be exactly one handle lower. So just for pessimism's sake, we'll say that you had the worst stop in this case, right? The further stop. And just in case you guys are wondering, yes, you did have some further opportunities when we created this breaker here. You would have had an entry at this level. And if we look, let's look at it. Your 3 PD array stop loss rule would have been fair value gap, order block, and I like to regard the swing low as available, but you also had the IFVG at this point. So you would not have gone and stopped out. I believe even in the future would have been a little rough on the drawdown there. Maybe scare you a little being up almost 1.6 R actually at some point. Yeah, almost 1.6 R. And then returning to break even and even deep in negative, but it still would have allowed for plenty of upside. So as you can see, 2 long opportunities. If you missed the first one, you could have had plenty of opportunities for the next one. But now here's the thing. You already took out previous day high. And previous week high, if we zoom out here, we can go on the 15. Previous week high is all the way up here. So what am I targeting in this point in time? Well, I'm going to use standard deviations for clear objectives, and I'm also going to look for swing highs in the 15-minute. So at this point, all the way up here, we're almost at previous week high, which was a clear objective for me. But we have a random swing high after this fair value gap, which would be hard to get through. So this was a clear objective. If we go to the 1 hour, it is also a 1 hour swing point. But I like to stick to simplicity and look at the 15-minute. So of course, previous day high, which in this case was already met. Perhaps ES meeting previous day high was a big thing I was looking at earlier today. But we have clear objectives. That's still an A setup, already in premium and no clear objective that was close. All right, so we don't have a clear objective, right? That's step 1. And you're talking about that top. And you're saying it's already in premium. But in premium of what? I don't care about my most recent 1-minute range. That's the truth. Moreover, I expect a trending day that's going to trade higher. Okay, so am I in the premium of my range? Well, I'll always refer to a 15-minute chart. In my 15-minute chart, at this point in time, you'd say you're in a premium of this range, 100%, right? And I mean, I'm looking back at it now and I'm saying, okay, sure. I mean, that range was already broken. So what range are you going to refer to? Well, the bigger range, because the smaller range has already been broken. And in that range, you're also in a premium. So, I mean, there's nothing much I can say here, right? Unless that, oh, well, look, you would have long Monday and you can hold on to that. But for anyone trading props and most people just day trading futures, I mean, I'm day trading on my own personal account. Holding overnight is not something you can do, right? So even though you're in a deep premium and you're in a longer premium, you're trading this whole move, which ends at previous week high. So with a clear draw on liquidity for your direction, pretty much, right? A longer term draw on liquidity, I wouldn't mind taking this trade at all. Of course, the trades I take here are getting stopped out a lot more than the ones I take here. But if you would have taken the first entry, you wouldn't even have to worry about this. This was more of a showcase that you still have a valid entry that worked if you missed the first one. But the truth is, there's only one good trade here, and it is the first one. And that first draw in premium was definitely a clear objective for me. I also had those standard deviations on my chart of the smaller fair value gap, but also the smaller breaker block, sorry, and also the bigger breaker block. Now, bigger breaker block gave you some nice objectives for the reversals. Let's be honest here. We tapped 2 to 2.5, reversed very nicely. But to be honest, I took profits initially at 4 standard deviations, seeing this beautiful wick just before the nice retracement, which would have almost stopped me out. So nice TP1 here. Retracement that almost stopped you out. I did as well scale in. I'll showcase it, of course, but right here I did scale into this trade. I just noticed something. That is a huge overlap threshold. Let's do 15 handles here. So it doesn't show me unicorns that are super far apart from my breaker, in case you guys were wondering. But definitely very nice first partial at 4 standard deviations. I mean, nothing much to add there. It would have been a beautiful trade. I didn't stop it there. Very glad I did that. Of course, this drawdown is just very scary. But at the point that you took your money out, that is your main trade, right? That is your main return on your trade. And even if you just take out 50% of your position here, which is what I personally do, I put my stops at break even and I'm just not scared. Of course, if you entered a little bit late on this trade, then that break even would have stopped you out, which is unfortunate. But it still left for a lot of upside if you would have held on. I personally looked to take profit here, and you might have seen on Twitter that I mismanaged my trade and actually ended up getting stopped out. I believe it was right here. Yes, right here. So quite unfortunate that I left all that money on the table. It actually could have been right here. I'm forgetting. I mean, I have the screenshot up on Twitter, so give me a second and I'll just go check. But as you may have understood, it is not something I like to remind myself right now of my mistake of the days. But of course, it's important as traders to take a second and reflect. So yeah, it was right here that I got stopped out. Well, that I closed my trade because I'm a bitch and I was salty that I lost money yesterday. So I was trying to play it safe. But trying to play it safe is not always a good thing. You have to follow your rules, and my rules said I should have been holding that. In case you're wondering, my trailing rules are very simple. I'm looking for us to expand past the swing high from a range we formed, and then I can trail to the low. So for example, when we expanded past this high, just closing above pretty much, my stop loss can now move to this low. And then once we expand past this high, I can move it to this low. If I'm trailing aggressively, of course. Now we form a swing high. I don't care about any other swing highs. I'm looking at this one. And once we expand above it, I can look to trail my stop to this low. If I can find it. There we go. And afterwards, as you can see, my stop should have stayed there because we did not expand past this swing high. Only when we close above here, I'd be looking at this. Barely closing above here is not enough. I'm going to see price scale up. Now I could have trailed my stop here. So a very easy mechanical trailing strategy in case you guys were looking for one. It is very consistent in finding the right stop loss. And see, if we're looking at it all the way, did we expand past this? Yes, we did. So you would have gotten trailed out at this point. Or, I mean, if I'm trailing very aggressively, well, no, actually, this is it. So we formed a swing high, formed a swing low. So you would have actually gotten stopped out right here, which is picture perfect, the high of the move. So definitely a very good trailing stop strategy. And if some of you guys are actually coders and you do automated strategies, this is the trailing stop strategy that 90% of my bots use. So something nice there. But definitely a very nice long opportunity, even if you took the later entry. And where was our stop? At this swing, you would have had plenty of opportunity just at 4 standard deviations. That's 1.4 R. In this case, I would have definitely looked to hold all the way up here. And see, it would have taken a while to get there, but still would have had very similar results on the continuation opportunity. Then, of course, holding a runner here, I'm expecting a trending day, so I'm going to look to hold until 4 p.m. unless there's a lunch raid. And if you got trail stopped, you actually got stopped out as soon as that lunch raid became valid. So, very good trade there. I'm very salty. I mean that I stopped my trade, but as you can see, I still got 2R at my partial and 3R on my final close. So is it a bad trade? Not at all. But this trade should have recovered my losses from yesterday, and it did not. So definitely not something I was quite happy with, I guess is the best way to say it. And then we have some PM opportunities. When can we trade the lunch session as noon to 1 instead of noon to 1:30? I see some regulars in here. It's very simple. We have two rules. If the morning is consolidation, was the morning consolidation? Hell no. We expanded higher quite aggressively. Okay, what is the second option? If our objective is already met. Now, what was our objective? For me, it was this level. You could also use the standard deviations. You had clear expansion past a lot of levels, previous day high, and the swing point in premium. This for me was my objective, which qualifies that I can look for a lunch rate short. I'm still only going to be looking at taking trades after 1:30, even though I'm using the noon to 1:30 range, the noon to 1 range, sorry. And then I'm going to be looking for some trades after 1:30. As we can see from the indicator, very straightforward. Our first setup comes right here around 140. You have a nice short right here as soon as we retrace into this inversion fair value gap. This candle formed the breaker block, trading below this here. We can even make it simpler by adding the line signal so we can clearly see where the breaker block was formed. And just from this, you retraced into it. 3PD array stop loss rule here would be where. So you have, I mean, this is just a volume imbalance. So it's IFVG, order block, and I mean, you do have an order block right next to it, but just in general, that swing point is enough. Let's be pessimistic and count the swing point here as your final array that you'd be looking for. And I mean, just from this point, pretty straightforward. You had a beautiful lunch rate opportunity for up almost 7R. Even a tiny bit more here definitely could target these equal highs for equal lows, sorry, for runner. You guys know me, equal highs and equal lows are great objectives at all times. You also had some lower that I would definitely look to hold a runner. But at that point, if you have more than 10% of your position left, I mean, you're throwing. And sorry, I'm using gaming terms here, but it is literally a bad choice. You're up this much R, and I would have even looked to take profit before then. Definitely bringing in standard deviations. Let's look at this. Pretty small breakers though, but see, 4 standard deviations at lunch low is great. This whole cluster right here would definitely be a place to take profit. So for example, at this low, but even then, that's pretty low. What about looking at our first discount and efficiency in this range? I'm guessing it's going to be pretty close. I would definitely use the equal lows for the range. And from this, I mean, you have a nice take profit here. 2 to 2.5 standard deviations. First discount and efficiency, this fair value gap. So going back on a 1-minute chart here, where would that land us? See, that's basically the swing low we were talking about. So 5R for partial, followed with almost 7R at the lunch lows, and finally at the relative equal lows, which would be a final take profit, or at least if I have more than one contract left in the position, I could look for a final runner, but the stops would at least be trailed to this final swing point here. A very nice trade, a very nice return on that trade, at least to lunch low, and of course that first partial. There is no way to define a partial before then. If you're taking a partial before then, it's based on the return of your trade where you're like, hey, I've made enough. So definitely a very nice trade there. That could have been pretty cool to trade. I don't trade the PM session quite often. I only trade it when the AM hasn't offered enough for me. Today, I was quite happy with my initial result, quite salty of mismanaging the trade. So it is not the best mental space to be in to look for a PM trade. And I mean, we can look at PM long opportunities, but there's no way I'm looking for retracement continuation in the PM session after we've already moved like 200 points since the open, but in the full day, we've moved close to 400 points, 350. So definitely not looking for any further opportunities. There were two great long opportunities in the AM, followed by a very nice short opportunity. And once again, price giving you a second chance. So if you missed that first one, there was a very nice unicorn right after that would have allowed for basically the same return because of a very tight stop loss here as well. That's what I like about the PM session, right? Due to the lower volatility, you have smaller stops, but the moves don't seem that much lower. It just consolidates a lot more often than that. Do we have any questions? I feel like I rushed through it, but we did go over everything that we saw for the day. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. I know I talked about what we discussed in chat today, right? About finding trending days and how can I be so confident in finding trending days. And we also talked about the lunch session, when to use it. So this one is definitely going to be going into the resources channels. I'll call it how to confidently find trending days. And I'll say we discussed the lunch framework. Definitely a lot there. And no questions. Perhaps Alex? Or was it pretty clear today? Hopefully it was. I try to go in depth here. Nice to see you again, Frag. All good? Awesome. Awesome. He's been trading on his side too, doing well. I see you, Frag. All right, well, on that note, guys, we're going to call it a night. It's been awesome having you all here. Have good luck trading tomorrow. Could you please explain the Judas swing? For sure, Fox. So, we always talk about manipulation when we see a move opposite to our target. So, for example, at the 9:30 open, we expect a move opposite to our target. But a Judas swing is just a manipulation. It's the same thing at a specific time. We call it a Judas swing. So specifically, we'll be looking for that at session opens, generally, or at news events. But instead of calling it manipulation, which is basically the term we refer to when we're speaking about AMD of like a higher time frame candle, we'll call it a Judas swing, which is just time-based manipulation that we generally look for at sessions opens. So pretty straightforward stuff there. Hopefully that answers your question, Flux. What do you think? Question for the week. I know on FP you don't trade Thursday, but even if there's high impact news, I do not because I'm using the conservative approach. But this week you'll see me trading on Thursday. There won't be a PA review though. I'm gonna be half risk since I still have some evals to pass, so still got some work to do on that end. And for me, it's more important to pass them quickly rather than with a nice win rate. So I'm trading every single day to pass all of them. Are you gonna live this week? No, I never live trade anymore in this Discord. To be honest with you guys, I don't like it. It makes me less concentrated in my trading, and I'm just on my charts for an hour and then I get off. When I'm live trading, I feel like I'm putting pressure on myself to stay here longer, and it becomes very hard not to trade in situations like this. So if you want to see live trading, I did a few. They are all posted in a playlist on our YouTube channel, so you can find them. But no, in the near future at least, there will not be any live trading. On that note, I'm going to wish you all a great night. Good luck trading tomorrow, and we'll see each other tomorrow night for another one of these BA reviews. Bye guys, have a great night.